Chapter 24 Stomp Dance. Despite all the hard physical work we have to do and non-stop schedule every day, there are warm nights when we still have enough energy to sneak out to the one place at Chilagi that's truly free. The woods. It's where we can hunt with no one watching. Some of it with possum's bow and arrows. Cook the game we get. He's a real William Tell when it comes to knocking down a squirrel from a high branch, and sometimes it's with his single-shot .22, which he's been letting me use. We can catch catfish from Chilagi Creek where it meanders through the trees. Sometimes, but not too often, a chicken finds its way out of the schoolyard hen and into our pot. We can eat better food here than it is ever served in the dining hall. The woods are where you can get away, where you're no longer here. Deacon is the one who said that first to me. Of all our boys in our creek gang, Deacon's the best rock thrower. He's like a major league pitcher. He can knock a can off a fence from 100 feet away with that sidearm delivery of his. He is also the most thoughtful of us, saying things that make you think. That's why he got that nickname, a nickname that's not entirely a joke. Like all the nicknames here at Chilagi, it makes some sense. More sense than the discipline and stupid rules. Like the one about dancing. No dancing. Not just here at Chilagi, but everywhere. The Indian Service actually published a broadside forbidding all Indians to dance, because dancing is a waste of time. It encourages heathen behaviors. That broadside was printed here in the Chilagi print shop by Indian students. It was one of the first things Deacon showed me when I was rotated to the print shop after my 2 weeks in shoe repair and harness making. Him showing it to me sure made me laugh. Not that the no dancing rule is funny. What's funny is that anyone would imagine dancing as being a bad thing. Also, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things they encourage here at this school is the Indian Club doing Western Indian dancing for visitors and performing around the area to create goodwill and raise money for the school. The funniest of all, which brings me back to Deacon, is that they can't stop us Chilagi boys from dancing. We just have to get far enough away into the woods along the upper reach of Chilagi Creek. That's where Deacon leads our stomp dances. Deacon is not much to look at. Average height, average build. His arms are long, though, which is one reason why he is such a good stone thrower. His skin's about the same color brown as mine. His hair is jet black, his face round and a little flat, though not as flat as the face of Pancake, who looks like he got hit by a frying pan. Aside from me, Deacon's the quietest one in Bear Meat's gang. But even though Bear Meat is our leader, some even call him Chief in a half-joshing way, once we get into the woods around the fire, it's Deacon who takes the lead. He grabs up a rattle and shakes it. "Opan kaha hoko," he shouts. Stomp dance. As soon as he yells that, he looks about 2 feet taller and everyone lines up behind him. One of the strange things about Chilagi, which might be hard for an outsider to understand, is how much freedom we boys have once we get off the main campus. All we have to do is be back in our beds before the first bugle call. But when you consider the fact that there's thousands of acres around the school with little hills and valleys, woods and fields, there's no way the authorities at school could ever hope to keep a total control weekends and during the nights. Some of those who run the school just seem to turn a blind eye. Even old Mr. Racket, who is the assistant disciplinarian and always looks like he is sucking on a lemon, ignores what happens in the woods or after dark. He's the one you see perched up on the water tower, the sun glinting off the binoculars he uses to spy on us. Matter of fact, some of the Indian staff members, especially those former students who now work here themselves, not only tolerate our going into the woods campus, but sometimes even take part themselves. Mind you, it's only the boys, not the girls. Those matrons in the girls' dormitories watch over them like hawks all through the day and owls all through the night. No one is allowed to sneak out of or sneak into those houses at night. It makes me feel sorry for those girls. But we boys have a kind of freedom in the woods that's almost as good as what I felt riding the rails with Pop. Almost. Even though I've been here 2 months, I haven't heard from Pop yet. I still wake up some nights whispering his name, listening for his breathing, trying to smell him, to reach out and try to touch his back, but not as often as during the first month I was here. Someone pokes me. Of course, it's Possum. Jaybird, move your feet. I've been standing rock still even though the stop dance has started, daydreaming at night. I do as he says, breaking into the shuffling rhythmic steps of stomp dancing. I no longer feel like an out-of-place white boy the way I did before. I feel like I belong to our gang. Maybe I'm not totally Indian, but I'm not the same as I was before. I'm seeing things another way. And stomp dancing. Hee-ah-hee, Deacon calls out. Way-ah-hey, the 12 of us all chant back as we shuffle around the bonfire we've built in the clearing a little ways back from the creek. Hee-ah-hee, way-ah-hey, hee-ah-hee, way-ah-hey, hee-ah-hee, way-ah-hey. It keeps on like that. Us dancing, repeating that chant as Deacon shakes his rattle that he made from a number 3 can with river stones put into it. If you're not doing it, it might seem like it would be boring, but it's not. The first night the gang brought me here to their camp along Chilagi Creek was a warm Saturday night. The second week I was here, we'd left dummies made of old blankets in our beds to fool anyone other than CB who might make a visit to look in on our dormitory. No one worried about CB causing trouble about our being out at night. CB had been a student himself. He'd climbed down the Virginia Creeper more times than any of us. He turned a blind eye to what we did at night, especially on weekends. But every now and then, Superintendent Morrell himself would visit the house after bedtime to check on his charges. He never did more than just pause at a door and peer inside. Actually, coming in a crowded dormitory, sometimes sort of rank with the smell of unwashed boys passing gas after a meal heavy with beans, was something that did not appeal to him. Walking the trail by light of the full moon that first time, I felt like I was walking not just into the woods, but back in time. The only one with a lantern was Bear Meat, the rest of us trailing behind, me last in line. The rest of our group looked like shadows more than people. But I was comfortable with that. After all, I had behind me all those nights Pop and I spent camping back away from the roads where no one could find or bother us. Before long we came to the long creek that runs through Chilagi's woods and prairie, and now there were more lights to be seen than the moon and distant stars in the sky above us. Along at least a mile of the creek I saw the glow of small fires, just about every 100 yards or so. I stopped to look at those campfires, squinting my eyes as I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Little Coon walked back to me chuckling. Yup, he said. That's how it is on a nice Saturday night like this'n. We got a whole bunch of stop dances tonight. More'n half the beds will be stuffed with blankets back at the houses. Possum came to join us. Alder Creek boys got their stomp grounds there, he said, nodding his head toward the closest fire. Next, there's 2 or 3 Cherokee gangs, a couple of Choctaw crews. The catfish in the creek won't be getting much sleep tonight. When we got to our place along the creek, the moon was bright enough for me to make out the shadowy shape of a small cabin set back near the wood's edge. That had to be the clubhouse Possum told me about. It had been built with boards liberated from the cast-off pile back of the carpentry shop. The roof was salvaged from an old building being torn down that would have just been burned. The moonlight glinted off the tin roof. We went to the very middle of the clearing, where I could make out a rough fire circle surrounded by stones. Firekeeper, Bearmeat said. Little Coon stepped forward. Present and accounted for, he said, his voice so mock-serious that it was clear he was sort of making fun of our morning military drills. Then he tugged at my sleeve. Know how to make us fire, Jay? He said. I didn't bother to say ehi. I just reached out and took the hatchet and the box of lucifers he was holding out to me. There were dry pieces of plank cut into short lengths piled by the side of the fire pit, along with bigger logs. I took my time, splitting the planks down into pieces almost matchstick thin. Other pieces I shaved with the blade so there were curlicues of wood all along their length. I arranged them into a conical shape, piling bigger pieces around them so the heat of the fire would rise up into the center of the little structure I'd made. Then I knelt down low, struck the wooden match on a stone, sheltered that flaring match between my palms, and gently thrust it in the center. The thin pieces caught right away, then the lengths with the shavings on them, then the bigger pieces. Before you could count to 100, the whole pile was blazing. "All right," Bearmeat said, turning to Deacon. They all knew I'd never stomped danced before. I told Possum that, and he'd just given me that split-faced grin of his. "Shucks," he said. "That's true of half the boys who come here. And no wonder seeing as how not just their parents, but maybe even their grandparents went to Indian schools. You just watch and join in when you feel like it." I'm not sure how long I watched that night or when it was I joined in. I just know that I found myself in that circle, dancing around that fire and feeling fine. We finish our first round of dancing. I'm breathing hard, but the night air is cool and clean, just as it was on the first night I stomp danced. I feel almost contented as I put some more wood on our fire. That's the job that has fallen to me since the first night our gang let me be the fire maker. As I pile on one piece of wood and then another, I find myself thinking about all the nights I tended to fire for Pop and me. Is he somewhere sitting next to a fire right now? The feeling of contentment leaves me. Once again, I am wondering and worrying. That one question that came to mind was like opening a door. At first, there's just a crack, and then it swings wider. A cold breeze blows in from the other side, but all it brings me are more questions I can't answer. What is my father doing now? Is he in Washington? Is he part of the growing army of bonus marchers I read about in the old newspapers I check every time I get to school's little library, which is a windowless room only a little larger than a closet? Sometimes those papers, which I know are donated by Mrs. Teague after she reads them, carry articles about the bonus army. Whenever I read one of those articles, all I can think about is Pop. Is he okay? Is he ever going to come back for me? That last question opens a whole other door. Now I am not just worrying about him, but about me. How long am I going to be here? Deacon has handed his rattle to Little Coon. Little Coon gives that rattle a shake. We're about to start another round of stomp dancing. "Hold on," Bearmeat says, holding up his hand. He peers into the darkness around the big sycamores at Wood's edge. "Who goes there? Step out and show yourself." A shadow detaches itself from the other shadows and moves slowly forward. "It's that white boy who keeps tagging along behind us," Dirt Seller says. It's Tommy Wilson. The moonlight shines on his pale, uncertain face. "Huh," Bearmeat growls. "What you doing here, Stahithki?" Tommy says, "Just watching." "You don't belong here, Stahithki," Bearmeat says. "Get gone." Tommy lowers his head and mumbles something. "Hold on," Little Coon asks. "What'd you say?" Tommy lifts his head and repeats the word. "Istikati," he says, clearer this time. It's a word I know because Possum taught it to me. Istikati, Indian. "What?" Bearmeat says. "You saying you are Indian, white boy?" "Muskogee," Tommy says, his voice even stronger. "That is what my dad says we are. Me too. Even if my mama is white." He squares his shoulder. "I got Indian blood. Cal knows I'm Indian." My, Little Coon chuckles. "Don't that beat all? But what you doing here, Muskogee boy? Why you follow us tonight?" "Stomp dancing," Tommy says. "I like it. We did not have any Indians around where we live, but my dad taught it to me. I know what song you just did. He called it The Old Rooster." Little Coon sidled up to Tommy. "So," he says, "you know any other songs, Muskogee boy?" "One or two." Little Coon looks over at Deacon, our dance leader. Deacon nods, and so does Bearmeat. "Okay," Little Coon says. He hands the rattle to Tommy. "Let's hear one." Tommy shakes the rattle, a little hesitantly at first, as he looks at Little Coon, who has stepped back and is rubbing his palms together. Then Tommy takes a breath and calls out the start of the song. His voice is sure and his feet start to move. Deacon gives Tommy's shoulder a gentle shove and Tommy shuffles forward, still singing as Deacon falls in behind him. Soon all of us are dancing, including me, an Indian boy who thought he was white, following a white boy who knows he's Indian. All of us are joined together and free in a song older than our breath and stronger than all the Chalagi rules.